So next weekend we have the big rematch between Alexander Usyk and Daniel Dubois at Wembley Stadium for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. With the stats cards we have become accustomed to with Riyadh's season in the last year and a half plus, we expect such a massive fight like this to have a big undercard with big names on there and possibly another world title fight or two down the card. But that's really not what we're getting for the Usyk vs Dubois 2 card, and that has boxing fans up in arms. This card has no depth to it at all. And now the co-main event of the card, or the main undercard fight or whatever you like, is Lawrence Okolie vs Kevin Lerena for the WBC Silver Heavyweight Championship. So the fact that this Okolie vs Lerena fight is the biggest fight other than the main event is an indictment of how shallow the card is. Now this is not ideal of course, but I believe I have said on this channel in the past that if there's any fight that sells itself without needing a super stacked card, then it's an undisputed heavyweight title fight. Well, funnily enough, I think I might have said this in preview of the Usyk vs Fury 2 card, despite that not actually being for the undisputed heavyweight title. But the pressing issue for me here with the Okolie vs Lerena fight is not how this fight is an indictment of how shallow the card is, but how the existence of this fight reinforces how irrelevant a certain weight class is. So if you guys didn't know, Kevin Lerena is currently a world champion. And no, he hasn't got some world title belt with a lesser regarded organisation, he doesn't have no regular belt or interim belt or whatever. Kevin Lerena is currently a full WBC champion of the world, but that is in the Bridgerweight division. But his fight next weekend with Lawrence Okolie is a heavyweight bout, Okolie being a heavyweight. So Lerena's Bridgerweight belt will not be on the line here of course. But you'll never guess who the last WBC Bridgerweight champion of the world was before Kevin Lerena. Yep, it was Lawrence Okolie himself. And this Okolie vs Lerena fight ain't a rematch like the main event of the card is. No, Lerena did not win his WBC Bridgerweight title directly off of Okolie. Okolie gave up his Bridgerweight title to pursue gold at heavyweight, and as a result, Lerena was then upgraded from interim champion to full champion. But Kevin Lerena now finds himself back up at heavyweight again as the sitting Bridgerweight world champ, and his first fight after winning the interim Bridgerweight title that he once held was also a fight up at heavyweight. So I guess this Bridgerweight stuff ain't really serious, is it? So again, in case you didn't know, and I wouldn't be awfully surprised if this video is reaching out to one or two people that didn't know this due to the lack of popularity of the division, but my videos seem to reach a lot of hardcore fans, so I'm sure you all do know. The Bridgerweight division is a weight class between cruiserweight and heavyweight with a limit of 224 pounds. It was created by the WBC in November of 2020, and the WBA then began to recognise the division in December of 2023. The division is still not recognised by either the IBF or the WBO, and possibly will never go on to be. Now the existence of this division has not changed the cruiserweight and heavyweight dynamics much on the grand scheme of things. Guys still fight up at heavyweight, weighing under the Bridgerweight limit, and the world's best cruiserweights still have their eyes on a potential move up to heavyweight in the future, rather than a move up to Bridgerweight. Well, that's basically just Jaya Pataya as it stands, as he's the only bad man at cruiserweight right now. But Bridgerweight has been the home pretty much for the fringe contenders at heavyweight who walk around at the mid 220 mark or under and couldn't find success in the big boy division. All guys who either fluctuated between cruiserweight and heavyweight or did not want to make the 200 pound cruiserweight limit anymore. Kevin Lerena himself being one of those guys in fact. Now due to the lack of depth in the division, Bridgerweight can also be used as a way to kind of easily become a multi-weight world champion. Lawrence Okolie is the only one to actually do it so far. He was a former WBO World Cruiserweight Champion. He lost that Cruiserweight title to Chris Billam-Smith in May 2023. And off of the loss to Billam-Smith, he walked straight into a WBC Bridgerweight title shot a year later in May 2024 against Lucas Rozansky. Rozansky, who had won the vacant Bridgerweight title against Alan Babich in April of 2023, over a year before that point. And Rozansky was only making his first defence against Okolie. Okolie knocked Rozansky out in round 1 to become the new WBC Bridgerweight champion of the world, making Lawrence Okolie a 2-weight world champion. Okolie made no defences of that Bridgerweight belt, and he is now pursuing gold at heavyweight so he can potentially become a 3-weight world champion. And Badou Jack is a guy who I would say tried to become a multi-weight world champ by winning a title at Bridgerweight but didn't fail to do so in the ring. From what I understand, after beating Ilunga Makabu to win the vacant WBC Cruiserweight title in 2023, the fight which made Badou Jack a 3-weight world champ, as Jack had previously been a world champion at both super middleweight and light heavyweight, Jack then entered the WBC Bridgerweight rankings to try and become a 4-weight world champion, so he was then made WBC Cruiserweight champion in recess. But he couldn't get a fight at Bridgerweight, so he basically went back down to Cruiserweight. So Badou Jack couldn't get the fight to have a token extra world title in a different weight class, the purpose that the WBC Bridgerweight title went on to serve for Mr. Okolie, because Okolie only fought less than a round in the division and, is a former world champion there. Now, I already waffled on about all that, so let me just quickly get into how the current WBC Bridgerweight champ Kevin Lerena got to this point. So Lerena is a former cruiserweight, actually a former reigning IBO cruiserweight champion of the world. The IBO being an unrecognised sanctioning body outside of the Big Four, of course. Boy, are we getting into irrelevant stuff here that nobody ever talks about. Lerena then got a win up at heavyweight in 2020, then he didn't fight at all in 2021 and gave up the IBO cruiserweight belt in late 2021. He then got 2 more wins up at heavyweight in 2022, and then for the fight that Kevin Lerena is most known for, he challenged for Daniel Dubois' WBA regular heavyweight title in December of 2022 on the undercard of Tyson Fury vs Derek Chisora 3 in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Of course, this is the very Daniel Dubois that will go on after Lerena in Wembley Stadium next weekend. Now in that fight, Kevin Lerena would famously knock Dubois down 3 times in round 1, then went on to be TKO'd by Dubois at the very end of round 3. It was after the loss to Dubois at heavyweight that Lerena would move on to Bridgerweight business. He went on to beat Riyad Mehri for the WBC Silver Bridgerweight title in 2023. Yes, that's the same Riyad Mehri who went on to lose to Jared Anderson in 2024 up at heavyweight, as a lot of you might know him for. Then later in 2023, Kevin Lerena took on Senad Gashi for the vacant WBC Interim Bridgerweight title. Yes, that's the same Senad Gashi who put on an absolute stinker and ran around the place against Derek Chisora back in 2019. And Kevin Lerena would defeat Gashi for that interim strap. Lerena then took a fight up at heavyweight in March of 2024 against Justice Hooney, and Lerena lost a decision to Hooney in that one, but Lerena was still the WBC Interim Bridgerweight champ after that loss at heavyweight, and he then went on to be upgraded to full WBC Bridgerweight champion in October of 2024 when Okolie gave up the belt. Lerena since made one defense of his full WBC Bridgerweight title just a couple months back against a guy that nobody has heard of in a fight that literally nobody covered. And he will now be fighting up at heavyweight again and stepping in as an underdog against a bigger name after that under-the-radar Bridgerweight title fight just a couple months back. In terms of nobody covering Lerena's Bridgerweight title defense against Sergey Radchenko in May, well yeah, literally no major boxing outlets cover this belt right now. Not one. Definitely not on this YouTube space. The WBC Bridgerweight title did get a bit of attention when Lawrence Okolie won the belt last year, but since Okolie gave up the title, you won't hear anyone on here talk about the Bridgerweight title. Not a fucking peep. And the major boxing websites don't even recognise the belt at all. Box Live, a very popular go-to for boxing schedules and rankings, do not display the Bridgerweight rankings on their site, and they list Bridgerweight title bouts as mere catchweight bouts and do not acknowledge the Bridgerweight belt as being on the line. And the world-renowned BoxRec also do not recognise the Bridgerweight division or its titles at all. They never have done. This ain't just since that petty shit when they stopped recognising the WBA. Now, this video ain't a rant or anything. Whether or not me or most boxing fans are pleased with the existence of this extra division, it doesn't really matter anyway because it's so irrelevant that it's actually harmless on the grand scheme of things. There really is a collective indifference to this division by the boxing public. Yeah, the WBC Bridgerweight title saw the light of day a time or two, but the WBA Bridgerweight title belt is essentially non-existent unless you're not even the hardest of hardcores, just if you're bored really. Again, me talking down on this division isn't me complaining about its existence or anything. I'm not bothered by it, and fair play to those who have found success in the division. I'm genuinely happy for them. But when this Lerena vs Okolie fight got made, I just found it rather amusing that the current WBC Bridgerweight champ is fighting the last holder of that very belt in a heavyweight bout. That really galvanises the irrelevancy of the belt, or of the weight class shall I say. So I thought I would use this upcoming fight between Okolie and Lerena to outline the Bridgerweight division's very objective lack of popularity. Anyway, you guys let me know your thoughts on the Bridgerweight division in the comments down below, and you have been listening to O.M.E Boxing.